Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When Ram Madhavji sent me a message inviting me to speak here, I have a very close friend. His name is also Anant Goenka. He is the MD of CET, grandson of Ram Prasad, of RPG, Ram Prasad Goenka, and we often get confused for each other. He's also from Bombay. He's a few years older than me. So when Ram Madhavji sent me the invitation, I, without looking at it, forwarded it to Anant Goenka, saying, I think it's come to me by mistake, it's actually for you. And he looked at it, and Anant forwarded back to me saying, no, it's actually for you. And why did I think that? I think I thought it was because normally in conferences like this, the numbers that you hear, the numbers that I heard for the last two presentations, I think the smallest number I heard was $75 billion. We're all talking in billions, trillions, a $15 trillion Indian economy. But the news industry and news is frighteningly small as an industry. And so that's why I always wonder, so you must ask Ram Madhavji why he's invited me here. I'm not sure. But I have an idea. And I have a theory. And I think one of the reasons that, that news is given the importance in India and in the world that it is given, and the reason that, a third generation promoter of a news organization is speaking here today, is because, much like airlines, no matter how difficult the business model of an airline is, cities are building and coming around air travel. So I think airlines are playing and just like airlines are playing an irreversible role in our lives, I think news plays similarly an important and an irreplaceable role in our lives and in our democracy. It's not just news. It's the organized news industry that's playing an irreplaceable role. And why am I distinguishing between news and the organized news industry? Because Web 1.0, we have been hearing ad nauseum that anyone with a smartphone is a journalist. And that's true. Of course, that's true. But now, 10 years after internet ubiquity all over the world, maybe 5-6 years of ubiquity in India, I think what we've come to realize is that generally, anybody with a smartphone isn't a very good journalist, generally. Of course, there are many exceptions, but they only go to prove the fact that doing the news consistently and with accountability is very, very hard. The news business is very, very hard. I think somewhere consumers are beginning to understand that the organized institutional providers of news have of course, an irreversible place and an irreplaceable place in society, but there is a demand for this. There's a demand for, somebody who's sticking their neck out and saying, here is what you should be reading. I'm saying this with some confidence today, especially after COVID. If you look at our industry, the growth of organized news industry that we have seen on digital platforms over the last 2 years, after the pandemic, I think it's proof that people don't just want the news, they want credible news. They want news from domain experts, and they want news that they can really, really value, trust, and question. So it's not just the smartphone-wielding journalists, but even big tech. I have friends at Apple. I think Apple is one of the most incredible organizations that is functioning today in the world. But the fact that Apple has been trying to get news right and has been doing it with very limited success for, I think, 6 years now, I think it just again goes to show that news is hard. So whether it's Apple or UC News, in spite of all of big tech's efforts to foray into news, I think it's clear now around the world that no one has been able to replace the role that the New York Times or the Washington Post plays in American democracy. No one has been able to replace the role that the South China Morning Post plays in Hong Kong, or that the Times plays in the UK. So all this goes to show that I think that news is hard. And why is it hard? Well, I think it's hard because just by its very nature, it's extremely difficult to tell somebody why you need to understand the erosion of the MFN that we heard right now. Why is the erosion of the MFN a subject that you need to spend time reading and consuming? At one point in time, a newspaper would land up at your doorstep, and the newspaper was only fighting for attention. The only thing the newspaper had to compete with was the family and the family conversation. I think now news is competing with so much, right? You have a constant bombardment of very attractive photographs and videos that are coming on your platform, on your social media platforms, and news has to compete with all of that. There's just so much that you have to convince a reader to not consume and instead consume something which can be quite difficult and tricky to package and to put together. So I think that's the very nature of news in itself, I think particularly shows that it's hard. Doing the news it's hard, and just doing that is hard. I think it's also hard because in these extremely polarized times that we're living in, people are constantly asking news companies to pick a side. They're asking, are you with us or against us? This is the game that big tech doesn't want to play. The evolution of news, if I can just take a second and ask, I had given a slide, if I can ask Diksha to just put that up. A lot of the news industry is facing these tremendous pressures, and they're kind of I think news industry, not only in India, but around the world, they're falling to this trap of taking a side, of picking an idea, picking a viewpoint. Reporters and journalists today, they're so evolved, the algorithms, they are getting paid. Reporters today get paid not by how many articles they write, but by how many people have become subscribers based on the articles that they have written. So excuse the messiness of this, but this is something that has some resonance around, I've shared around in my industry, and people tend to refer to it a few times, that this is sort of the evolution. I'm just showing you the evolution of news. I call this a Neanderthal to New York Times. You start with an aggregate and report the news, and you do it consistently. You write and produce it well. And then you start distributing it well. And once you do this consistently and you distribute the news well, you become a destination product. That's your first step to establishing a direct relationship with the consumer. And once you have a direct relationship with the consumer, monetization opportunities kind of explode. You start charging the consumer to read the content. You do all sorts of things. You can do brand solutions better. You can do affiliate businesses. The monetization explodes. But this is just very, very tempting to get news organizations to start picking a side. So I think, when we think of rebooting India for Web 2.0 in a more connected world, I think we must remind ourselves that in this environment where it's extremely tempting for news media to pick a side, we must remind ourselves the value of the old classic objective journalism. The classic objective journalism, which is not taking a side, but it's doing its work based on issues. And the fact that objective journalism is in everyone's interests. Especially in India, I feel where the space for the opposition, and when I say opposition, I don't mean only central, I just mean an opposition voice, a opposition voice, whether it's center or the state, or whether it's even, in corporate India. The challenger, the opposition voices has shriveled and shrunk. In this environment, I believe that a free press is vital. And it's vital for what? It's vital for creating a culture of checks and balances. A free press, when we think of a free press, we have to think of what a free press is and what a free press isn't. A free press isn't the opposition. A free press isn't the opposition voice. A free press isn't for or against any political party. A free press doesn't keep telling you that the world is better today than it was yesterday. A free press investigates. A free press shows, articles, and invest time and effort in creating and producing content which is uncomfortable to digest for not just for powers, but for every reader. It's about bringing issues that are getting buried. And I think that we have to recognize that this benefits not just citizens and activists, but it benefits the economy. It benefits all of society. In the Indian Express, it's almost been 11 years since I joined the Express Group. And when I joined the Express Group, it's a family business, and my father asked me to join. I had joined the Express emotionally since I was born, but when I formally joined, the task given to me was to make the Indian Express catch up with Web 1.0. This was 11 years ago. And the shortcut that I was told to catch up to Web 1.0 was to do the ABCD: astrology, Bollywood, cricket, and devotion. The ABCD got you to get successful on web. I'm really happy that none of us took that shortcut. Ladies and gentlemen, today, on the backs of our unique style of investigative and explanatory journalism, the Indian Express Group is reaching 200 million users a month in 6 languages around the world. We're one of the largest digital news groups in the world in terms of sheer size. And I don't think we could have done any of that if it wasn't for staying true to our values of objective, independent, and honest journalism. So I think I'll end over there. Thank you so much for having me.